Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Trump Trolls Trump, where I mock him. And also just wonder, why he's still using my name. Anyway, it has been 250 days since this nightmare, since the golden age of America began. That would be 35 straight weeks of nothing but winning. The economy booming, prices down. Do people even use the word groceries anymore? Why would they? We don't even have to shop for them. They just fall into our refrigerators. Inflation? What? What is this thing you call inflation? We are leading the battle against climate change. We stand as a shining beacon of light and hope, unwavering in our defense of free speech. When it comes to medicine, we lead the world in scientific and medical research. We are not experiencing the largest brain drain the country has ever seen. Of course not, because we are respected by all nations. And the United States of America, quite frankly, she's the hottest country in the world. And by that, I do not mean the temperatures are hot. Well, none of that's true. Unless, of course, you're somebody who actually listens to Donald. And if you are, shame on you. Get a hobby. I want to start with a little issue known as free speech, something that is enshrined in the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. We know that in this country, we can say practically anything we want. Almost all speech, including hate speech, is protected. So we can say things like, Donald Trump is a fucking moron, without any fear that the government will retaliate against us. We can talk about how stupid he is, and how corrupt he is, and how ignorant he is, and how insecure he is, without any fear whatsoever that we will be punished. So, when this statue appeared on the National Mall this week, we weren't so sure anymore about how strong our First Amendment rights really were.
Also in the district, pop-up art is turning heads on the National Mall. It's a statue depicting the president and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, set up on the lawn near 3rd Street overnight.
At the National Mall, people stopping, staring, and snapping photos.
I think it's fantastic. I took some pictures. I'm sending them to my sister down in North Carolina.
The 12-foot-tall statue depicts the president and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein holding hands, along with a plaque that reads, "In honor of Friendship Month, we celebrate the long-lasting bond between President Donald J. Trump and his closest friend, Jeffrey Epstein."
It's hilarious. It's entirely appropriate. Two of them are, bound at the hip.
Two other plaques include quotes from a birthday note allegedly written by the president to Epstein. The White House has denied the letter is legitimate.
The president did not write this letter. He did not sign this letter.
The pop-up comes nearly 2 weeks after the Senate voted 51-49 against a bill that would have forced the public release of case files related to the sex trafficking investigation into Epstein. Those files dubbed the Epstein files.
Aw. That's sweet. Although I'm not sure why closest friends is in quotes. I mean, they were indeed very, very close friends to the extent Donald has friends. It turns out the activist collective known as the Secret Handshake is responsible for creating the statue. But before dawn on Wednesday, U.S. Park Police lifted it onto a truck and carted it off. An Interior Department spokeswoman told Reuters, quote, "The statue was removed because it was not compliant with the permit issued," unquote. But what do you believe is more likely the case? That or that somebody got his feelings hurt? Donald must have seen this thing. Someone must have told him about it. So here's the latest from local USA 9 News from Washington.
Well, I spoke to one of the organizers of the group, the Secret Handshake. He told me that they picked up the statue from a warehouse this morning and spent hours putting it back together. Now, here are some pictures that the group shared with us of what the installation looked like when they picked it up this morning. You can see the broken leg and the red tape holding pieces of it together. Now, this video was shared with us about 2 hours ago. It's what the statue looks like after some repairs. It's in a van right now and not on the National Mall. This is because members of the Secret Handshake were hoping to get a new permit today, one they say was approved approved. But when they went to get the permit, they say the deputy director of the National Park Service stepped in and revoked it, telling them they would never be allowed to have a permit again. Now, the gentleman representing the secret handshake spoke to me on the phone on the condition of anonymity. He says this whole experience has been frustrating.
Well, it's just confusing because it was my understanding that President Trump was all about rebuilding statues that had been torn down. And since this one is also of a controversial and maligned figure, I would have thought this would align with his views on statues.
The gentleman I spoke to said that they've now renamed the statue. It's now called Why Can't We Be Friends? At the National Mall, Melissa Kim, WUSA 9.
That seems like a perfectly reasonable reaction, doesn't it? Yeah, but as we're learning, Donald's thin-skinned overreactions to things just sort of backfire. He doesn't understand that by making large, sweeping public efforts to silence his critics, it's just giving his critics and their arguments a bigger platform. He clearly has never heard of the Streisand effect. Take, for example, the Jimmy Kimmel debacle. Donald claimed that it wasn't what Jimmy Kimmel said that got him canceled. It was his low ratings. You know, the fact that he has no talent and couldn't get any ratings. Well, let's check in on Kimmel's ratings now, shall we?
Breaking news, Jimmy Kimmel. The ratings are in for the first day. And by the way, this is just on the linear here we'll share. 6.2 million, 6.26, actually 6.25 million viewers on ABC. That was 4 times Jimmy Kimmel's average. And that's despite the show not even being available in a quarter of all American homes. And the reason for that, of course, is those local TV station owners, Nexstar and Sinclair, they're refusing to air Kimmel's program. So even without a quarter of households, they managed to do that incredible surge.
Oops. That is what is known as a self-own. Good job, little guy. And then there's another debacle of Donald's own making. The U.S. economy, which is now facing stubborn inflation, slowing job growth, and rising unemployment. Consumer spending is weakening as households struggle with higher living costs, while tariffs and trade tensions push up business expenses. All of this exactly the opposite of what Donald promised in during the 2024 campaign and when he started announcing his stupid tariffs. Forecasts are dimming, and looming government shutdown risks threaten markets, consumer confidence, and already fragile growth momentum. Why is all of this happening? It cannot be that the person in charge is a fucking idiot. No way. I refuse. I refuse to believe this. I refuse to believe that the person who is in charge of everything, the person whose party is in charge of everything, has any responsibility for this whatsoever. It must be the Whigs. I mean, the Democrats. The party that controls nothing. They must be to blame. Now, with uncertainty on the rise, we'd like to bring in a voice that's grounded in facts. Someone who's going to calm the nation with a sobering, unflinching message about the economy and what appears to be a looming government shutdown. We need somebody who can cut through the spin and give us the facts. Please ground us in the reality of this moment. I have a question, though. Are we looking at a government shutdown, or is there any possibility it could be avoided?
We have a great economy going. You saw the numbers yesterday. They're fantastic. The economy's doing well. Prices are down. We have virtually no inflation. Everything's going good. We're respected by every nation in the world. And you know what happened? The Democrats want to shut it down. And they want to shut it down because they want to give billions, ultimately trillions of dollars to illegal migrants, people that came into our country illegally. Some of those people are criminals, but they came into our country illegally, and they want to give them the essential over years, trillions of dollars, and our people aren't going to stand for it. They also want to have open borders. They want to have men and women's sports. They want to have transgender for everybody. These people are crazy, the Democrats. So if it has to shut down, it'll have to shut down. But they're the ones that are shutting down.
White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett has a slightly different view on the matter, but only slightly. Here he was this week lying on Fox State TV.
Having a clear continuing resolution has been something that's happened 13 times in a row with bipartisan support, and they're willing to shut the government down, I think, because first, they're worried about their left, but second, we have so much positive momentum in the economy right now that they think that they got to change the game because they're losing so bad.
See, as I said, all lies. And if somebody could please explain to me how attacking trans people has anything to do with the economy, I'd like to know. So back on April 2nd, which will go down in history as being Liberation Day, Donald initiated his unwarranted and unconstitutional trade war against the entire world. And remember this, because this got me upset. The penguins. Remember the penguins on an island all by themselves? That actually sounds like paradise to me. Anyway, Donald imposed tariffs upon them. I'm still rooting for those penguins, and I have a question. What currency do they use? I think the penguins are going to be just fine because I don't think they trade very much with us. Our farmers, on the other hand, what effect are tariffs having on them? Well, these tariffs, also effectively taxes, have in fact raised costs for farmers, squeezed export markets, and cut profits. Who could possibly have predicted such an unpredictable development? Well, now our hapless negotiator-in-chief has a plan to help all the farmers after he completely stabbed them in the back. From his gold-plated and gaudy Oval Office, he had this to say.
We want to take our money. We're doing well because of tariffs. We're doing unbelievable. We're making more money than we ever have made. And by the way, we're going to take some of that tariff money that we made, just to get off the subject for a second. We're going to take some of that tariff money that we made. We're going to give it to our farmers, who are, for a little while, going to be hurt until it kicks in. The tariffs kick into their benefit. So we're going to make sure that our farmers are in great shape because we're taking in a lot of money.
Yeah, see, there are a couple of problems with that. So basically, the farmers are already hurting, despite the fact that the tariffs haven't kicked in fully yet, which actually means that things are going to get much worse. Donald is claiming that we're bringing in tons of money. What I worry about is that money is going directly into his pocket. But here's the thing, Donald. You can say as much as you want that you're bringing in more money, the likes of which nobody has ever seen before, and it won't change the fact that you are a completely worthless human being. And then we find out that Donald is not just an expert on the economy. No, he is also an expert on all things. A set of, Tylenol.
Effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol.
I'm actually surprised that actual Dr. Mehmet Oz didn't walk over and pat him on the head. Yes, well done. Acetaminophen. But Donald's expertise knows no bounds. He's an expert on climate change. I'm not entirely sure how you can be an expert on something, the existence of which you deny. Because in what was, and I am not going to qualify this at all, the most embarrassing, humiliating speech in the history of our republic. An American president stood before the General Assembly of the United Nations and spouted gibberish. But at least he wasn't condescending about it because, humility goes a long way in taking the sting out of things, doesn't it?
It used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler. So now they could just call it climate change because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything.
There is indeed nothing braggadocious about claiming to be right about everything. Nothing, says the greatest con job ever to walk the earth, and a deeply stupid person. So it turns out, and you know, if we had just bought that hat, maybe we would have made our lives simpler. Instead of listening to the world's scientists, climatologists, you know, people who are actually educated in such matters, just admit they're wrong about everything and Donald is right. There you go. Simple. Who could possibly, seriously, get it seriously, who could possibly defend such an absurd claim? I don't care who you are. You could be the most brilliant person on the planet. If you tell me that you've always been right about everything, no, you embarrass yourself. Yeah, but then we have Lee Zeldin, spineless director, tragically, of the Environmental Protection Agency, who is so good at towing the line because clearly he knows upon which side his bread is buttered. Take a look at this nonsense.
Lee, I can't believe just years when everybody would say climate change was a third rail. Don't bring it up. The president says it is a hoax. It is a con job. Where do you fall on this?
The president is absolutely right.
Of course he is. Why? Because Lee Zeldin is a coward who's probably afraid that Donald is going to write a nasty post about him. But before we get to our last troll, please like and share this video. Share it with your enemies because that will be fun for me. And also, it'll help us get the word out. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Donald's speech at the UN was the least notable part of his visit there. Something else took center stage. And again, I'm sorry to get serious again, because this is Trump Trolls Trump, and it's supposed to be a little lighter. But, you know, a lot of shit went down at the UN. And it was very simply triple sabotage. That's right, a hat trick. Here's an update from ABC.
Donald Trump is demanding an immediate investigation into what he called triple sabotage during his United Nations visit on Tuesday.
The escalator may have stopped, but the controversy is only escalating. On Tuesday, President Trump walking up to this escalator at the United Nations, but just as he and the First Lady stepped on, the escalator came to a halt. The president and his entourage forced to walk up. The UN insists there was no foul play, saying a videographer from the president's delegation who was ahead of him likely triggered a safety shutoff by stepping back on the escalator after reaching the top.
All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle.
But yesterday, Trump far more serious, posting, "It's amazing that Melania and I didn't fall forward onto the sharp edges of these steel steps face first. It was only that we were each holding the handrail tightly, or it would have been a disaster. This was absolutely sabotage," as noted by a day's earlier post in the London Times. That said, UN workers joked about turning off an escalator. The people that did it should be arrested. All security tapes at the escalator should be saved, especially the emergency stop button. The Secret Service is involved.
Okay, instead of characterizing his getting serious, can we not put this in the context of his being a thin-skinned baby who is afraid of stairs? He was forced to climb up a flight of stairs. What? It makes it sound like he was sent to a gulag and had to do hard labor for 20 years. And then to turn around and suggest that, one, he was in the middle. He took one step onto the fucking escalator, by the way. And that he and Melania were somehow in danger because that mean old escalator has sharp, pointy teeth, like the killer rabbit out of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. What have we become? What have we become that the president of the United States goes to the United Nations to address world leaders, and all we're hearing about is the fact that the escalator stopped, the teleprompter didn't work for 2 minutes, and Melania couldn't hear a word he said because she wasn't listening. And now a full-scale investigation. Not only is the Secret Service looking into this, looking into what exactly, I do not know, but Donald wrote a sternly worded letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations, doing something he's actually quite bad at, uniting people, because now everybody at the UN understands that he's a fucking asshole.